and crime. All of those issues are things that people trust Trump more with than Kamala Harris. So I think that's a pretty good sign if you're Donald Trump.
What kind of language are we allowed to use here?
It's Ishtalk, man. Talk your ish.
The polls are bullshit. Like you look at them and you look at the real clear polling averages, which are the gold standard. They've got Harris up in Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Nevada, Trump up in North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona. But then we've got these signs that it should be a blowout for either side, right? Like Georgia, or I'm sorry, Virginia within 4 points. That should be a sign for a blowout for Trump. But you've got Trump +4 in Iowa, which should mean a blowout for Harris. Colin Allred +1 in Texas. So in my mind, don't listen to the polls. This race is going to be a tie straight through election day.
But brother, if it
I
was,
mean,
go ahead.
I'd rather be Harris than Trump, but there's no point thinking this is anything more than a, you know, point 0.2, 0.5 point game.
Well, I think you bring up an important point, and it's that most of the polls are saying that it's within the margin of error in most of these cases. The margin of error is give or take about 3 points. So when you have the discrepancies being at that level, and but what you're seeing across the board, specifically in early voting right now, which is definitely something that Democrats should be concerned about. You can see that in these rural counties, in these areas, Trump is increasing the number of people that are going to early vote by numbers like it's up like 35 points, 45 points in certain rural counties, specifically in Virginia was one of the ones that I saw that was occurring in. Now this is happening all across the country. I believe that Scott Pressler was recently talking about the fact that Trump is winning in early voting in Luzerne County in Pennsylvania. I mean, you look at that. You look at those early voting numbers. This was the only metric, by the way, in the 2022 midterms
Oh yeah,
that was an accurate predictor, was early voting, because all of the polls were showing a red wave. They were showing a Republican blowout, and it was kind of a little red
it
ripple.
was
You
a
know,
it was
there
a little
wasn't
tinkle.
right. It was
Yeah.
a little tinkle. It was a little tinkle in the toilet, and emphasis on the toilet. They should have done much better.
Yeah. Yep.
But when we look at this, the early voting is literally signaling. It's like a smoke signal. It's a spotlight in the sky saying that Trump is about to obliterate Kamala Harris. Like, no doubt.
Whoa, 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 whoa. I don't think we can compare 2020 and 2024. You know, like polling average or polling
2022 is
errors.
what I'm comparing, not 2020.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, but we were still in the pandemic to a degree in 2022 to the degree we were in a
We were?
pandemic then. But look, like in these last races, Trump was saying don't vote by mail, and Democrats were overwhelmingly voting by mail. I don't think we can look at that as an
He switched
indicator.
up,
And the
huh?
polls,
But that's 2020. We're talking about 2022.
sure, and let's look at the polling errors in 2022 then. I don't
But
see
I'm
it
talking
as
about
a
early
huge
voting,
indicator.
not polls. Early voting. Early voting.
I every single indicator I think is irrelevant. You're looking at a different set of facts. And maybe the early voting shows a Trump lead in those rural counties. But are we looking at the gains in Allegheny, the gains in Philly, the gains in Erie? Like it's not enough for me to draw an opinion from.
Well, do you know what the gains in Allegheny and these other counties in Pennsylvania are? Because if we're looking, I'm actually curious to know this, because if Kamala is outperforming her early voting numbers by 40%, then you're on to something there. But as far as I can tell, I haven't seen those numbers. I haven't heard of that. So
Yeah, I mean, we should look at it. It's going to take a lot for any individual indicator to convince me of anything in a race that's going to be decided by, about 12 votes.
so you think it's going to be decided by 12 votes? I mean, the margin was about 80,000 specifically in 2020. Yeah, in 2020, the margin was an 80,000 votes, and then Biden wound up taking it. Now, obviously, it was a mail-in. There was COVID going on. And I think we could both agree that it was an election conducted differently than elections past.
Right.
Whether we want to say it's stolen or not, it was definitely conducted differently. I mean, there were There was plexiglass put up at polling stations. Poll watchers had to watch from a distance. There was a lot of different things going on in that election. You can say it's not stolen. You could say it's stolen. Whatever you want to say, you can say that it was different. So when we're looking at the different metrics, that's an 80,000 vote margin. And that's not only an 80,000 vote margin, but it's an 80,000 vote margin, which had Democrats having a clear advantage because they are the ones that more commonly mail in vote. When voting access is made lax, when security functions on ballot acceptance, like less registrars required for a signature verification, and like what happened in Georgia, or not requiring an ID to vote. All of these things help Democrats. Democrats wind up doing better with these mail-in votes when these types of things happen. So we look at the 80,000. We look at that 80,000 margin there. Now these things aren't in place anymore. We've had courts overturn a lot of the things that made 2020 different, and among those things are taking the voting deadlines. You used to be able to vote 3 days past election day. That's a thing of the past. You used to be able to send in a mail-in ballot without a postmark. That is also a thing of the past. You were also able to vote without having your signature verified. Again, no longer the case. So where are we at now? We're in a situation that seems to be benefiting Trump on every single front in this election. Plus, we don't have the problems of COVID. And then in addition to that, he's riding off 2 assassination attempts. In what way and by what metric is it even possible to say that Trump doesn't have the advantage? I can't think of one.
I mean, the RCP average does, right? They still have Harris at 276.
And that's national polling, though. It's skewed. The national polling is skewed very often because of states like California. Well, what polling are you talking about?
State by state averages. You go to Real Clear polling, yeah. And there have been huge margin or huge polling errors in the past, but we've seen them go both ways. I think everything has been too fundamentally different from this situation. I think this election's going to be bizarre. I think we might see, Virginia come down to 4 points, but Harris add North Carolina and lose Georgia and Arizona. I think this is going to be a weird race. Harris losing Georgia? Yeah, I think it's more likely than not. I mean, this is the state with the second biggest Trump lead among the swing states. I really see it as likely or incredibly possible that Georgia and Arizona go to Trump and North Carolina flips.
Okay. Wow. I didn't. Okay. So, all right. So, Joe, you're saying that Trump is going to blow it out. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, I actually think that states like Virginia, and perhaps it depends on the approval rating of Tim Walz in Minnesota at the time, that the Minnesota might be in play too. So what I'm looking at right now is a red wall starting from Minnesota, going all the way across Wisconsin into Michigan, into Pennsylvania, and then into Virginia, down to
Joe,
North Carolina.
You're lucky I'm not a betting man, but that would probably end poorly for you.
Ishtalk. You say you getting paid, that's Ishtalk. See me with my babe, that's Ishtalk. The money in that way, that's Ishtalk. I beg.
Yo, welcome to another episode of The Lord Show, Ishtalk TV, live from the DMV, doing the how it's supposed to be. I hope you got some kush at the crib, some cat in the bed, and some cash in your pocket. What more can be said?